I have a Slimbook to show, I have a Pinebook to show, and I have the new Slimbook to show, and I have some guinea pigs to show, and some Iron Brew. So you can take your pick from them.
Nice.
Oh, fantastic, man. Are you recording now?
I am.
Rocco, how does it sound?
I don't know how it sounds yet. Right now, I'm not running KDE, but there are other reasons for that. Who knows? Maybe we'll get into them.
Sure, we can fix that by the end of this recording.
Okay. Everybody ready?
Let's do it.
Welcome to another episode of Destination Linux podcast.
Welcome to episode 52. I'm Rocco.
And I'm Ryan.
And this is Destination Linux. Ryan, today we have somebody with us that is pretty awesome to have on a podcast. What do you think?
This individual works on a lot of things that you'll go through here in a second. A lot of things, but maybe best well known at the moment for the work on KDE Neon. Jonathan Riddell.
Jonathan, you are a Canoeist, a computer person, former developer of Kubuntu, the first Ubuntu Core Developer. Your list goes on and on and on. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's a big honor and very pleased to be on. And it's quite a dark, dreary night in Scotland here. It's a very sad week, very tragic week. So it's good to be cheered up by yourselves.
And it's tragic because they're removing sugar from one of your favorite beverages.
This is our national drink. It's called Iron Brew, and it's the stuff that we all grow up on. You get weaned of it as a wee bairn. Right. And this week they're changing the recipe of it, so they're removing half the sugar. It's the nanny state. The nanny state trying to get us to not die of heart attacks and stuff. So this is the very last can of Iron Brew.
Oh, look at this.
Full sugar.
On our show.
Yes.
And we'll celebrate it together tonight.
Here, I'll cheers you with the Diet Coke that has no sugar.
I got coffee.
Speaking of nanny state.
No sugar.
Well, that's a shame. That's a shame they're removing your favorite beverage. Everybody knows, coders and computer people, we need our sugar to stay up late and continue working on our projects. And removing that sugar certainly means it's going to have an impact on the level of code that comes out of Scotland now, I think. Yeah.
It will be a shame, but it's a balancing act. Of course, I understand you don't want people dying of heart attacks, and at some point you've got to say, well, no more heart attacks. But
right.
But what are we going to do on those late nights? I don't know.
So, did you stock up with cases and cases of what is there now?
Well, I tried to. I went to the shops, but this is the last one left in the local shop because there's been panic buying throughout the country. And the whole country's had to stock up on this stuff. I've been away for Hogmanay and come back and there's none left.
That is so funny that the drink's causing that much. The company's kind of liking it, at least at the moment, right? Because everybody's buying out their entire stock. All right, so let's get into some of the questions here. One of the things that I noticed when I was going through your profile, John, is, and this comes out immediately, and I thought this was quite interesting because as a fellow geek, you actually go outside and do activities like canoeing. You're a huge canoeist. You're big into canoeing. So what got you into that? Because geeks aren't supposed to be athletic. That's like a rule.
Well, it's important to get beyond your boundaries and get out from your screen and get talking to people and improve your people skills. And I love to do that by paddling along the canal, which is at the back of my flat here. Uh-huh. And I can commute to the office and work along the canal, or I can commute out of town.
Oh wow!
And then on a good weekend, I'll find a river and jump off some waterfalls, or I'll organize some courses and teach people how to capsize in 50 different ways. And I highly recommend that every geek takes on some skill, but also takes on the skill of teaching that skill, because then, of course, that improves your people skills in all aspects of life.
I love how you said take on teaching that skill. I think that's number one. It's one of the best ways to learn, I've found. If you take, that's kind of the foundation of my YouTube channel was, hey, I'm doing all this geeky stuff all the time. And to solidify it in my brain, if I'm going to teach somebody about it, then I've got to learn it deeper and know it better to be able to pass that on. But so in my area, I live in the mountains of Georgia in the U.S., and we do whitewater rafting out here. And, well, I wouldn't say I'm very good at it. I've fallen out quite a bit, and it's quite embarrassing every time we go. But it is a lot of fun when you're with the right people that kind of keep it safe. So definitely neat there. So if you were forced to choose between having to canoe full-time, because you're a coach, it's not just something you do on the side, right? I mean, you're a level 2 coach. You take it seriously. Or coding KDE Neon. Someone said, hey, which one's it going to be? Which do you choose?
Don't ask me that. It's a terrible question. I can't choose between my two loves.
And it's meant to be a terrible question.
And of course, I can combine them. I've been to.
You can't code while you canoe?
It's not quite combine them that closely, but I can commute into the office by canoe, or I've moved to Guadeloupe, so I can go canoeing in the mornings and then code when it gets dark. It would be very difficult to split the two. And they're complementary, of course, because one is useful to the world at large, because we get to give away our software, and that gets used by millions of people all around the world. And one is useful to me and my community and the people who I live around. So they just go together really nicely. And I don't think I couldn't choose.
No problem. It was meant to be a silly question.
In a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to go to Uganda to give up coding for a couple of weeks and go and kayak on the Nile. So here, using the latest of split-screen video technology is where I'm going to be paddling on.
Look at that. That's amazing. Wow, that's going to be a lot of fun.
And how long are you going there?
Biggest one that I've ever paddled on. Well, 2 weeks, but we'll see. I might not come back. Maybe I'll love the place and just decide, no, I'll go and live here and not come back. I
guess it depends on how good the internet connection is.
Right.
As far as I know, it's on an island in the middle of the Nile called the Hairy Lemon. And as far as I know, there is no internet connection. So that is forcing that choice to be made.
You'll come back then.
We'll see. We'll see. If you don't hear from me, I've either drowned, fallen in love with the Nile.
All right. So in a prior interview, you mentioned that you started with KDE back in 1999. So was that where you started with Linux, or did you start with Linux earlier than that?
Yeah, I think that was when I started with Linux. And it was the usual story of I moved to university, got my own computer for the first time, and a friend of mine, Paul Sladen, who you can also Google and is an interesting character who I love very much. He gave me a SUSE CD, and I installed it and thought, well, this is a bit rubbish. How can I fix the bug? and then you find yourself fixing one bug, and then you go, oh, that was awesome. I can do that. But this bug needs fixed over here, or I need that feature or something added, and then you get hooked. And especially at university, because you're meant to be learning how to code, how programs work, and they teach you academic stuff like UML or formal specification, but they don't teach you stuff like how to read a bit of code that's already been written so you can improve it, or how to read an API. And the only way to do that is to get into open source. And at the time, Linux on the desktop was going to explode in the next few years. So I thought I'll get into this, make my career in it.
Very nice.
So you go from working on KDE. How do you get involved with Ubuntu and Canonical?
Well, I'm a Quaker, which is quite a niche kind of religion, especially because I'm an atheist. So I guess as religions go, that's fairly niche. And I was hanging around in London with a bunch of Quaker geeks, and the Venn diagram between Quakers and geeks is also fairly small. So there was only about a dozen of us, and we were in London and we were discussing projects that we were working on. And one of my good friends, David Harris, was working on a project called Shuttleworth Super Secret Debian Startup, and this was being run by a spaceman who had decided that he would take Debian and tidy it up, and this was going to take over the world of Linux and as soon as it was announced. So I thought this was a good idea, but tragically, I heard that KDE was not to be included on it. So I made lots of writings and blog posts saying, KDE people, we need to get involved in this project because it's going to be significant, and we're going to be left behind if we're not involved in it. So when Ubuntu was launched, my blog was the most top hit in it, so that they found it in Ubuntu, and they got in touch and asked if I wanted to get involved and help out.
And at some point, we were talking about this a little bit in the pre-show, but you became an Ubuntu Core Developer. So what that you were saying, that means you were kind of one of the first individuals who was able to release code into the core. Yeah,
so they had to create a whole community process as part of Ubuntu, because at the time it was defining itself as being, let's tidy up Debian and make it a bit slicker and a bit smoother, and that included the community process, which at the time in Debian, which is an awesome community, but it was literally blocked at the time because they couldn't have any new Debian developers and so forth. So they were creating a new community process for how to get people on board, and as part of that, they were working out how do we give people permissions, and what committees and groups and councils do we need. So they were finding their way, and eventually they managed to find their way into defining something called an Ubuntu Core Developer, and I went along to that first meeting and said, I can contribute in this way and that, and here's some proof of that I'm not going to screw things up and what I've done before, and so they gave me access to the entire archive, but wow. But with the explicit instruction that I could only upload anything beginning with K. And as far as I know, that instruction has never been lifted.
Oh my gosh! So is that where all the K stuff comes from?
Because if suddenly we start naming programs in KDE with better names, then I won't be allowed to upload them to Ubuntu.
Oh my gosh!
Too funny.
All right, so you work with Blue Systems, but you also have your own consultancy business. So what is that involved, and what do you do there?
Well, it's mostly just the branding that I use, Edinburgh Linux, whenever on the rare occasion that anybody comes along and says, we are interested in building Linux on our devices, can you help us? And of course, the main people I work with are Blue Systems, which is a fun company that does lots of interesting projects in KDE. And I've also done projects before with, for example, NCR, which is the company that makes most of the cash machines in the world. You call them ATMs.
Yep,
nice.
And at the time, they had Windows NT on it, and that was out of support from Microsoft. And so the banks were going, really, you should put something secure on this. We're going to pay you to put Linux on it. So I made them a custom distribution to put Linux on their distributions. Awesome. Or for example, I was asked a couple of years ago, a friend, he does websites for a company that rents out properties like Airbnb, but in Edinburgh. And when people go into the property, there's a paper folder, and they look through the folder for when do you put out the rubbish or whatever other information. And they wanted that as a tablet, and they wanted it as a locked down tablet so that people could go in and easily use this device. But they couldn't screw up and mess up with the device. So we came up with a plan for how to put in Plasma Mobile and Linux system on that device, which was friendly and easy to use, but you can easily break it either deliberately or unconsciously.
Right.
It must be nice running into you and having you convert somebody to Linux. It's like, I don't know, learning chess from Bobby Fischer. Like, there's no problem they're going to run into that you're not going to be able to fix for them. You know, I mean, that's got to be great for them. If somebody needs consulting Linux, help, that would be a great. You couldn't find much better contacts than John here to help with that. So, of all the projects in the business I work in telecom, we deal with consultants a lot, and I always ask them, what are some of your favorite projects that you work on? Because I always have that one project that's stuck in their mind where, they were able to make a big impact or see something come to fruition that they wanted. Do you have one story like that?
Actually, you flatter me too much. It's always lovely to see where your work gets used that you weren't previously aware of it, and that happens an awful lot in free software because we don't track people, so we don't know who uses our stuff. But for example, if you're watching the Hobbit film and you've seen an awful lot of Bilbo Baggins fighting off the baddies, and then you're so keen that you watch the DVD extras, then you can see at Weta Digital how they have all their computers running KDE software, running Kubuntu, and running our software, and that's really,
oh my god,
it's really rewarding, really flattering to know that.
Oh, that's so awesome.
That these really fantastic graphics that you've just seen in this brilliant production that they make, that you've enabled them to be able to do that, and that's really satisfying.
Well, I mean, that is such an important thing to highlight, because you're not just talking about good graphics. You're talking about graphics that won awards for being completely state of the art. For instance, they had completely reinvented the idea of how many enemies they could show on a screen at one time, which was completely new code that they had put into place that now a lot of movies are using. There was a lot of cutting edge stuff that happened in the filming of that movie. And it's pretty cool to know that some of the computers, at least, if not all, were utilizing some of the products that you've helped build. That's awesome. What a great movie too, to be linked to.
And what's interesting about them is how they do it on the most isolated country on the map in New Zealand. It's right on the edge of the map, and so they don't live in the bubble where they think, well, we'll do what the folks next door are doing. They think from scratch, how are we going to do this when we don't have Microsoft up the road or IBM up the road or something? We better work out how to do this ourselves, and they work out how to do it themselves, and they do it better.
Yeah, you should frame that part of the movie and put it in a picture in the back, because that's too cool. Now I've got to go get the DVD to find that section.
Well, what reminds me of another movie is on your Twitter page, you have a profile pic with which you appear to have like a face tattoo. So, is it easy to get work with a face tattoo or what? But
yeah. But that's the canoeing side of my work. That's an event called the Artemis Kildrugan Quadrathlon, and
easy for you to say.
Go up to the Highlands, and all these fit people get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they start off by swimming along Loch Tay, which is a very cold and narrow swim. So they hire people like me to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and accompany them across the loch and make sure they don't drown, and give them somewhere to rest for when they do get tired. And then we get the rest of the day to sit back and relax and get free food and play on the bouncy castle and have the face painter paint our faces. So that's a really fun event and yeah, really quite rewarding job.
We love that picture, and it cracked me up when I saw it. When we wrote the question of the face tattoo, clearly you've had it lasered off since then, so you're all good.
It was only temporary.
Clearly. All right, so one of the biggest news items for 2017 was Ubuntu going to the GNOME desktop. So there were many people, including myself, that asked the question, why not KDE? So were you asking the same thing, or what's your thoughts on that whole situation?
Don't want to get too deeply into this because my relationship with Ubuntu is somewhat mixed, and they've taken that time something of a dislike to me, and so I don't want to spend my life moaning about them because I guess it's unfair since they're not here to defend themselves. If they want to pick on GNOME, then that's fabulous because it means I don't have to get too close to whatever they're doing, and it means that the stuff that I've gone on to do in KDE Neon retains its important niche and its important use case. I guess you can see it as being symbolic of how the desktop is now not terribly important to the commercial side of Ubuntu, and so how they've just reverted back to what they did before. And there's some interesting stuff in GNOME as a platform. It has many lovely features, but they're just not as many lovely features as Plasma has.
Right. So it's good, but not as good as KDE.
Obviously. Well, so some of that when you go through obviously and look up your name, you could see some of the stories about some of that kind of stuff that went on, but ultimately it led to something amazing. It led to you going off and creating KDE Neon. So what point did you decide I'm going to start a distribution? Well, I mean, some people call it, it's not really a full distribution. Well, let's start there. Is KDE Neon a full distribution?
Well, no, not as my understanding of a distro, because a distro will care about the whole operating system. And that's more than I want to care about. I just want to stand on the shoulder of giants and care about the stuff I care about, which is mostly KDE's output.
So what would KDE Neon, what's the category that you put it in?
But
I mean, you download it to an ISO, you stick it in a computer, it installs, it's an operating, to me,
so if
I'm trying to figure it out as a new Linux person.
Yeah, so you can use it as your full distribution, and that's the most common use case, is that you install it as your full distribution. But most of what you're installing there, of course, is just coming from Ubuntu packages. But the magic stuff that we add is that we work deliberately directly with the KDE developers as part of KDE, as just one of many projects within KDE to get their software shipped as quickly as possible.
Interesting.
Okay, so the 1804 LTS is releasing April 26th. So how quickly will KDE Neon be moving to 1804?
Don't know. Hopefully pronto. But we've never done this before, so I'm reluctant to say it'll be on the day. But we are building our packages against 1804 currently, and most of those are built. We have some of the infrastructure, we have put in place the infrastructure for user upgrades. So in theory, it's all there. But of course, this is engineering and computer software, and roadblocks can certainly come. So I don't want to say immediately, but it will be prompt.
Nice.
So for those that don't know, Neon offers a couple different versions: the user LTS, the user edition, developer editions. What is the main differences between the two, and why are there three of them? Like, what's the purpose of each one specifically?
Well, let's start with the purpose of Neon, which is that in open source software, we have this crazy split where we have these people who write the software over here, and we have these people who distribute the software over here, and occasionally they overlap, but for very much of the time they don't. And that's just weirdly inefficient, and it's just I think it's a very old mindset, and I think it is not particularly sustainable in a world where every single computer is hackable today, and nobody knows how many devices I have in my back cupboard that suddenly won't be updated, and suddenly everybody can hack them. It needs the people who write the software to be able to put the software on those devices immediately, and it needs the people who write the software when they make a release and go, here, I've made all these shiny new features, and the users go, fabulous, I want the shiny new feature, to be able to get the shiny new feature. And under the old distribution model, that's not particularly possible, because either they're only released every 6 months, and you have to wait 6 months, or you have to find some obscure additional repo to add, or you have to compile it yourself, which normal people can't do.
Right.
So Neon was always designed to be deliberately a KDE project, so that we would be part of KDE, and I'm the release manager for Plasma, which is KDE's flagship project. So I'm able to make sure that when something is needed in Plasma, then it's in Neon and ready there for it. And one of the use cases for Neon is users who want that software, but it's also for our developers. Our developers want to make sure that the software they're developing is available for people to test, and that it actually works. And so we have these multiple editions based on the multiple use cases of our software. The users, so we have an automated system. It's very perishable, very DevOps, very continuous integration system that will automatically pick up releases and build them and release them. And that's the stuff which should be good for users. But there's some automatic QA in there as well. So it doesn't get released within the minute. It takes about half an hour, because the QA runs to make sure that the stuff can actually install and run. And then there's the developer editions, which is built directly from Git. So that's a bit scary and a bit crazy, and you would only run it if you know what Git is, for example.
Yep.
If you know what the process is of people putting in stuff into Git, and how reliable that is, which is more reliable than you would think, but occasionally it breaks. And so if you want to test the latest and greatest, then you use the developer editions, or if you just want to be a normal user, you use the normal user, and you still get the software pretty pronto.
So when you guys are going through your development process, you've got these different editions, obviously, that push to the edge, but based on when you talked about defining Neon to begin with, it's kind of every edition is cutting edge in a way, right? Because
yes, absolutely.
You're always getting the latest. It's just the other editions, like, for instance, the developer editions, for instance, they're going to be way on the cutting edge, meaning this thing just came out and it's got bugs, pretty much guaranteed. We're going to work those out before we move them to the user editions, but that's when you would utilize that type of test case. Is that fair then?
Yeah. So the story of how it began was we were on Venice Beach in Los Angeles, and it's a beautiful beach, and it's really nice and long, and there's waves coming in, and we took surfing lessons on Venice Beach there. And when you're surfing, you have to be lying down on it paddling, and then you have to suddenly stand up and do this yoga lunge into standing up, and that's the most difficult part that I can never quite get the hang of. And it would be an awful lot easier if the waves just stopped, so you could stand up and then you said wave start. But that'd be crazy and inelegant, and it's not how the world works, and it's not how the world should work. You just want to continue on going. So the old distro model is like if the wave just stopped and people said, okay, can we stand up now? And it's very clunky. And the current way that we do it in Neon, redefining how open source works by just working with people who make the software, doing it continuously, doing it using modern DevOps techniques where the system is just defined in code, and like if all our servers blew up, then okay, we would start some new cloud servers and we've got all the code defined and they would start. And that's an awful lot more elegant than how it used to be done.
How did you guys come up with the name Neon, by the way?
Oh, that's my good friend and colleague Harold, who puts in most of the work behind the code that runs our servers, and is a elite KDE kind of person. And Harold came up with Neon because it fitted in with the rest of the names in KDE, which were to do with physical objects, including plasma. And if you have neon lights, then that's a plasma. If you have neon lights.
Very cool.
All right, so there is a myth out there that KDE is heavy on resources, because maybe at one time it was.
So Rocco, guess what? Last night when we were talking about the show, okay, you said KDE is you go, Ryan, it's a myth, that KDE is heavy on resources, right? Yes. But as a new Linux user, I've heard this all the time. KDE is heavy on resources. KDE is heavy on resources. Now I put it on my Ryzen build. It hasn't gone on the Beast yet. But last night when you told me that, I took Neon and I put it on my old 2012 MacBook Pro.
Was I right?
Because you, not only were you right, but I came across something really interesting I wanted to ask Jonathan about. So I was running a different distro. I won't name it because I don't want to bash any distro. I was running a different distro that's kind of known as being a light to mid-light distro. And it was using about the exact same resources as KDE. So that part busted, right? KDE's wasn't any heavier on resources at all. But I had Telegram running when I was doing a system monitor and also an HTOP to look at resources using. I had Telegram running. And on the other distro, I was running at 40% of my CPU. When I went into KDE and used Telegram, my CPU was only at 6% usage. The processes were the same. Is there something with KDE that makes it able to handle that type of package, be more resource friendly with that, or is it just some type of fluke?
Yeah, we've got a magic team. I'll switch to the other camera and I'll show you the magic team working in the back room. It's our magic team of guinea pigs.
They are
magic
good.
KDE team. I love it.
Wait, which one did the resource calibration?
So they're constantly doing a process of reevaluation and improving our software, making it run much faster.
That blonde one looks like Rocco.
Oh my gosh.
And although you don't realize it, we use the vulnerabilities that somebody found in Intel and ARM today in order to install the guinea pigs directly on your computer, so that they will. So that they're working away in the background, making sure all the windows are smooth and making sure the animations are nice and that the indexing gets done, doing all the hard work while just letting the CPU pretend that it's got some important.
I don't see a single keyboard in there. I think you're lying.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only 3. There's only 3 magic people on the team.
3 guinea pigs here, yes, yes, but they're very hardworking.
There you go.
Anyway,
so do you guys do anything different with optimization of certain software? Do you think that's just a fluke? What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, of course we do. We do lots of things, but there's no one single quick fix for these things. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it is also done. It's done in Qt, the widget toolkit that we use, mm-hmm. And we use that for most of our visible applications, or all of our visible applications, and including Quinn, the window manager, which of course means that it improves the performance of every application, even non-KDE, non-Qt stuff. And that's written in such a way that it makes best use of the accelerated graphics available to your hardware, but it successfully degrades in a user-friendly, in a way that is usually not noticeable. When running on older hardware or hardware that doesn't have the magic graphics chips. So it's just good software engineering done by
guinea pigs,
done by teams of developers working on all sorts of different devices. Uh-huh. So one of the great things about KDE is we make software not just for Linux desktop, but also for Windows, for Android, and for cars, for anything, and for Plasma Mobile, which I guess we'll get onto, and having that cross-device spectrum means that the stuff from one device over here also improves the performance on all the other devices, because it makes the user interface scalable and makes the technology scalable to the machine that you have.
So you mentioned Windows there, and it kind of leads into one of the questions. So Microsoft creates this walled garden, right, where they have Office and some other programs, and sometimes they'll share it with Mac if there's enough of a interest over there. They think somebody, for instance, like Apple or iPhone, they'll move their products over there. For the most part, they try to wall garden DirectX and all these other things for keeping people. But then we've got these Linux folks over here producing some of, which we'll get into in a minute, the best applications, some of the best applications out there, and also making them for Windows. So they're a walled garden, but we're sharing all of our stuff with them. Why? Is that a good thing?
Is it a good thing? It's freedom. You can't stop it. KDE had this big debate a decade ago when we were first able to port stuff to Windows. And some people said, yeah, we should do this. And some people said, no, we shouldn't either. It's letting them in. And then reality is that it's freedom. And in free software, you can't say, no, you can't do that, because then you kill off your own community and your own users.
Interesting.
So you can't stop people running stuff on Windows, and if they want to do that, then they have their reasons, and they may or may not be good reasons, but they're important reasons for those people. And it's nice that they get to use such freedom as they can.
So what are your thoughts on Windows 10 recent news about offering Linux Shell in the software store?
I'm yet to try it. It successfully shows that
Linux is awesome. Yeah,
Linux is awesome. Whenever I use a Windows computer, I do go, why the heck does anyone use this nonsense? I can't work out how to be productive in this stuff at all. So I guess it's nice that people have this new way to be vaguely productive with it. And I guess we can just hope that it makes people go all the way and suddenly realize they don't need Windows at all.
Well, what I found interesting, I have been playing with it, and what I found interesting about it is people have already found one of the things they lock down is your ability to launch GUI applications, right? It's supposed to be just kind of shell scripting. Well, people have already in the Linux world figured out how to work around that, and now they're launching the full-on programs with the GUIs within the emulator. You never tell a Linux person you can't do something, because by tomorrow they will have done it. So they're already finding workarounds for that. But it's kind of interesting because there were a lot of theories when that came out about, is this Microsoft trying to absorb some of the impact Linux is having? Is this Microsoft kind of doing a play that they've done with other companies in the past? To me, it seems kind of non-eventful from a Linux standpoint. I don't really hear that much about it.
So one thing that certainly stands out from KDE is the suite of applications. So let's talk about a few of these applications in detail. Like, I don't know, Dolphin File Manager, the best file manager on the planet. It is absolutely the best file manager, bar none. When you start out a distribution, when you start out in KDE, you start out with all of these settings. And one of the reasons that Dolphin is so good is because of the ability to customize it to the way you want. So obviously that's by design, but how much of it is by design to allow people to customize everything? Obviously it's got to work first.
Oh, yeah, it's an important part of the philosophy of KDE these days. So to introduce KDE in general, it started out as being a desktop with a bunch of applications that work together, and it's long since grown beyond that. And so we create Plasma on the desktop, and we have a whole bunch of projects that just work on their own. We have a suite of applications that get released every 4 months called KDE Applications. But it's a community, so we have all these people who work across the different projects. So if you bring in your particular project into KDE, the advantages is that there are people who just want to help out everywhere across the KDE community. And these are people that include translators. So if you import your program, suddenly you get 50 odd different translations. But it includes designers as well, and people who work on usability. And that means that they can keep things functional and consistent with the other applications. And they tend to be guided by the philosophy of simple by default and powerful when needed. And so if you fire up Dolphin, it's a simple file manager when you first run it, and it's got your folders and it's got your back keys, and that's all you need. But as you feel that you suddenly need some new feature like labeling or searching, then it's easy to find out where those features are. And they're designed so that they shouldn't get in the way of users until they need them. And then when they need them, they don't get in the way. They are easy to find and they're easy to use.
Well, one of the programs that we use constantly is KDE Live, and another absolutely awesome program. The best.
Well, when we talk about KDE Live, KDE Live was one of the core reasons I stayed with Linux. It really was, because at the time I was doing YouTube content and I was using all Adobe products. I didn't want to run Wine and all that type of stuff. I was testing Linux out. KDE Live was one of those programs that somebody recommended on my channel when I was doing the Linux challenge. And when I found it, I was like, oh, this is a video editor I can actually use that's easy. It's not overly complex, but it has the complexity you need to do very difficult things if you need it to. But on the offset, cutting, clipping, moving videos around, adding text, overlays, all that stuff it's kind of native to your normal, movements that you would in any video editor, meaning the stuff is where you would expect it to be. And that's what I think makes KDE Live super powerful. Definitely one of the best ones. And the ones I keep telling you, another one, Rocco, is Krita. Krita is just amazing. I don't know if you've checked it out yet, but that's one of the ones I've told you I just absolutely fallen in love with. Very, very powerful.
No, I have
application
not,
as well.
I don't have a use case for it, so that's why.
Because you're not graphically inclined, but either am I, and I still play with it.
Wow. So
and Krita is quite a niche application, but it leads its field, even amongst the proprietary, more established applications. So it's a painting application, and you can use it to draw cartoons and simulate the effects that you would get with paintbrush and oil brushes and whatnot,
right.
using modern graphics. So it's not a replacement for Photoshop or the GIMP or whatever. It's a niche application for people who are professionals and who are really very talented, and the artworks that they make with that program are stunning. Really
It's amazing. Just go on the website and it'll just blow you away.
Well, the one program that does it for me is KDE Connect, and that is
so brilliant.
It is the reason that I love KDE, because of the innovation that you guys do, where you'll take something that's needed and you'll look at it and you'll say, hey, we need this in a Linux system, and you go do it, and it works awesome. It's one of my favorite apps that has come out in the last couple of years.
It's such an obvious idea. Once you use it, you wonder why nobody else has bothered to come up with the idea or even particularly copy it. Having your phone work with your desktop so that you get text messages on your desktop, or the music stops when you're answering a call or something, that seems it's just seamless and obvious once you're used to it.
Yeah.
And it's astonishing that nobody else seems to have parried it.
It's such an important feature that Mac users had for a long time with iMessage. And it's just one of those things that you kept wondering, why does nobody else doing this in Windows, like you said, or any other platform? And I think there have been many attempts, but they failed. But the one thing I love, like Rock was saying about KDE Connect, is it really, truly works. I mean, it has a find your phone feature that rings your phone, which is awesome. You've got the notifications, the ability to move files back and forth. Super simple to set up and get working. And it is, to me, even though it's a small thing, it was kind of, when I installed KDE Neon and I was playing with that, because I'm an XFCE person normally. I love the customization of that. Everyone's been telling me, if you like customization, check out KDE. So, but Neon's really the first one that I've dove into for a long time in a while. And wow, is it just amazing. But that was one of the programs that caught my attention the most, is the simplicity and usefulness of things like that. And then Plasma Vault, which is just a very, very simple idea. Once again, brilliantly implemented, user-friendly security encryption. And I think that's so important, because when you talk about security with people, a lot of people's eyes glaze over because it's going to be some complex method and program you've got to install and do all these special steps to get it encrypted and da-da-da-da-da. But you guys just made it so simple. You click through a couple of menus, you move your files over, it's done. Loved it.
That was a new feature that we added in the last release of Plasma. And it just came from the idea that KDE has a focus on privacy now. And so what can we do to enable that for users? And well, obviously built into the desktop, just make sure you have a trivial way to encrypt your files and other content. And this week it's shown how important that is, because every single computer suddenly is vulnerable to people trivially hacking it. And so you do need to store all your details inside Plasma Vault.
Yep.
Nice. Okay, so we've talked about some of the awesome features about KDE. So let's bring up some of the critiques that people have on KDE. So one of the critiques I hear all the time is the Discover software store. So I know that it's a work in progress, but it seems to me there needs to be a lot more work done in order to have it be a viable alternative for a software center. Because I usually install Synaptic if I'm running KDE. What's your thoughts on it?
I think Alesha's put in a lot of hard work into it, and our designers put a lot of hard work into it. It works very nicely for the users that I put into it, and it can be a bit experimental in its use of Kirigami, which is our user interface framework that we make it in KDE. And so that's because it uses cutting edge there. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe there's some quirks in when all the widgets show or how you interact with them. But whenever I ask people what problems they have, it's rare that they will actually be able to point to a particular problem.
Well, one of the problems that I had with, and I don't want to go into like every problem I have with it, but I mean, one of the problems that I see is when you view your installed software, it doesn't sort your installed software in any form. They're all randomly listed in, like when you click on installed software.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ran into some issues here. First of all, I've fallen in love with KDE Neon. I think that's important to mention. It's finding its way on all of my computers right now. So it's a small critique, especially with all the good stuff that you've done. But the one area that I will tell you that frustrated me the most was Discover Software Store. It was just constantly locking up when you were trying to install things, and or when you're typing. If you type too fast, it just kind of goes into a constant spin. And that was whether it was on the MacBook or the Ryzen build, it was kind of the same way. Now, certain times, if you stopped and opened it back up, it would immediately be fast, snappy, work like it was supposed to. Certain times I was able to get 6 or 7 programs installing in a row and it was working beautifully. But every once in a while, it would do this hang, and it's almost like it's caching too much, or it's trying to cache the searches. Because if you start searching and then you change your search, so let's say you start with, KDE, and then you add Plasma to the end of it, that's where it seems to really start to, during those type of searches. And I've even seen on different forums people saying you got to type really slow and that type of stuff. So it seems like there may be like a caching there. But as far as the overall design of Discover Software Store, what I see there is the potential for one of the, because first of all, I don't know of a distribution, and I've tried a lot of them, that actually does a software store really well. It's not something anybody really has yet. But the Discover Software Store is probably one of the ones where I see certain features, like when you're typing, it's actually types your search across the banner as well. It's beautiful. The icons in there are beautiful. The descriptions are there. So I can see the hard work you're talking about. I think there's just those final touches and maybe some things out there that could make it literally perfect from a software store perspective. But like I said, not to beat up on it, because clearly a lot of work's gone into it, but there are some small issues there.
We love it's very important, of course, to find bugs or particular issues that people have. Discover will have the difficult job that it's got to work cross-platform with all sorts of different distributions, and also from different sources as well. So it's not just about software, it's about downloading the latest comics for the comic applet, or the latest widget themes or icon sets from opendesktop.org. When something doesn't work, and it also works cross-device as well, because it works on Plasma mobile and tablet stuff as well as on the desktop. So if you find issues like that, then absolutely please report them. But if you can, it's always nice if people take the time to be able to write a list of instructions so that the issues can be recreated.
Exactly, right. And
one of the great features about KDE Neon is we have Docker images, so that you can easily recreate exactly the environment on any computer. It doesn't matter what distro it's running. So using the developer unstable Docker images, you can trivially install the latest stuff from Git and in a fresh environment and work out, does the bug that I've got here actually still exist as it is being developed in Git? And here's the steps to do it, and then you can report that. And we find that immensely valuable when users follow that process.
I actually saw a video of you talking about Docker images. So how does someone go about, like for a regular user, is it easy enough for a regular user to use a Docker image?
You need to use a command line. So it depends how regular your user is, but as long as you're the sort of person who can use a command line, then yeah, it's trivial. There's a script that I wrote, which comes pre-installed on Neon, or you can just download its Ruby script called Neon Docker, and you run that, and that will let you either run a Plasma full desktop inside a window in your desktop, or you can run individual applications, or you can run a Wayland desktop if you want to test Wayland, or you can run an X desktop if you are on Wayland and you want to test X. So there's all sorts of use cases for it which are very easy to get up and running when you want to test, does this particular environment have the same issue that I'm seeing over here.
Nice.
All right. So one of the questions we have from the Patreon Center there is, how much influence or interaction do you personally have with the individual programs for the KDE suite?
Well, influence, I don't think I can claim that much myself. But the important task of Neon is that when a bit of software is compiling and running, but they haven't quite done the final bit, or they haven't quite considered how it would work on something which is different from the system that they have. So just for example, there's a Plasma GTK theme, so that when you run Plasma, it will integrate your GTK applications and they look sensible. But the developer of that removed support for GTK 3.18 for some old version, because it's considered old and unsupported by GTK. But it turns out quite a lot of people still use that version. And so when we updated the stuff in Neon and went, hang on, this isn't working, we had to then go back to the author there and say, this should probably be reverted because there's still an awful lot of users there. So do I have influence? I guess insofar as Neon is a way that people get our software, then a lot of the developers will care that it works on Neon. So yes, I guess you could say I'm very important.
He'll just stop feeding the guinea pigs and then they'll do what he asks.
That's right.
So one of the things that I did notice when you talked about submitting a bug report, which this is an important thing that, frankly, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but in all the distro hopping and my year in Linux so far, it's one of those situations where I run into a bug and first of all, I assume normally it's me doing something stupid. But number two is...
Usually it is.
Yeah, it probably is. And number two is the ability to submit a bug is often extremely difficult. This changed for me yesterday with KDE because I was doing something probably stupid again. And it was a widget thing I was messing with, the settings behind, and it ended up crashing. And it immediately popped up and said, do you want to send this bug to KDE Neon? And I don't remember what the exact text, but that's essentially what it said. And what I'm used to is clicking next and assuming that goes nowhere. But it wasn't done. It starts going through these lines and taking and asking if I want to install this program to give you guys deeper debugger information and explain exactly what happened. And it was so refreshing to see that because I really felt like for the first time, as somebody who doesn't know what to put in a bug report, that you guys are kind of guiding me as a novice along the process to give you something important that you can actually use. What's gone into that? Because I've not seen another bug report like it.
Well, we defined a number of KDE goals for the next forthcoming year or two, and one of those goals is to streamline onboarding of new contributors. So it means that when people want to help out, possibly because they found a bug and they're annoyed and they want to show their annoyance, or because they're lovely people who want to help out, whatever reason, that it is, people are guided through to the point where they can make some useful contribution. And so we have Dr. Conky, which is our crash handler, which is probably what you were finding. Yep. And that will give you a backtrace, which...
That was it, the backtrace install, yeah.
It's very technical and scary to most users, and you have to be a C++ programmer to know about it. But especially they're not very useful if you don't have the debugging symbols installed. So Dr. Conky should guide you through installing the debugging symbols, so that then becomes useful, and then guide you through putting it onto the bug tracker, so that we end up with a useful report, which can detect duplicates, so that if multiple people do it, then it gets pointed to just being a duplicate report, or it can be a shiny new report, fresh for the developers to take a look at.
And that's the brilliant part too, is before you click submit, it says, hey, there are two other reports that are similar to yours. Look through these, make sure it's not the same thing. If it is, no problem. Just mark that you're having the same issue and we still record it. So it just makes it so that normal users can feel like they're actually adding value to submitting bug reports. And I think it's a brilliant thing you guys have done. Absolutely brilliant. Loved it.
Okay, so let's talk more about the KDE goals for 2018. You said that you mentioned one already. You have two other ones that you guys outlined. So what are the two other ones?
Well, one is privacy software to make sure that your computers aren't spying on you, and that you're not vulnerable in the way that every single computer is now vulnerable, and we live in a dystopian future, which is horrifically scary. So we feel this is a bit of an important point in this day and age. And so, for example, in KDE Neon, we've put a lot of work into the fairly unsexy, uninteresting part of having assigning all the code from developer to installation on the machine, where you have the difficult process of making sure that the code which is written over here is actually code that gets run on the computer over there, and there isn't some hacker somewhere in between putting on some code which is going to end up blackmailing you and making sure that you end up in a fist fight in the forest to the death. and this involves a lot of GPG keys and making sure those keys are in the sensible place and able to verify that it's the correct ones. And it involves a lot of doing that in an automated way, because if you did it manually, you'd make mistakes and you get bored. And so making sure our systems can do that securely in an automated way to make sure that the software that you get installed from Neon and hopefully other distributors will pick it up, is the software that gets released by the KDE developers.
And the last goal?
The last goal is usability and productivity for basic software. So one of the fabulous things that's occurred in KDE in the last few years is the creation of the visual design group. And this is a bunch of sort of arty-farty people who aren't the biggest nerds, but like software to be beautiful in terms of looks and beautiful in terms of how you use it.
Exactly.
And that it's taken some change in the culture of KDE because, for example, we all used IRC. Now, nobody in this day and age wants to use IRC unless there's some hardcore nerd. And the sort of people who want to make icons don't want to use IRC. They want to use Telegram or some other more friendly method. So we've had to work out ways that different talents of people with different preferences for working can become part of the same one big community. And hopefully we've successfully done that.
So one of the areas that is near and dear to my heart, because I've spent 18 years now in the industry, is in the mobile arena. I don't consider Android a true Linux solution because it does not implement the things we love Linux for. I don't think it's particularly incredibly secure or private or any of those things that we like. So the idea of having a true Linux-based device to me is incredibly mouth-watering. I would love to get my hands on one. And you guys are doing something with Plasma Mobile here. And in fact, I've ordered myself a Nexus 5 for fun to put Plasma on it. But can you tell us a little bit more about this project?
Plasma Mobile has been going on for a number of years, and it's just a result of the technologies and decisions that we made when we were first starting Plasma, that you would, simple by default, powerful when needed, that you would boot it up and it would have that sort of Windows 95 interface with a start menu over here and the applications over here. But it would be infinitely configurable so that it could scale down to what at the time was a netbook interface, a small laptop, and then smartphones came along. So we designed it to be able to scale down to smartphones. My good friend Bushan is continuing to work hard on making sure that runs successfully, not just on the Nexus, but on every project, because he's integrated it with Project Halium, which is what came out of Ubuntu Touch project when that was dropped as a commercial project. People took that up as a community project and said, well, let's work together with Plasma Mobile and other people, so that there's support for it on a whole range of different devices. And it should work quite nicely. And then last year, some people popped up who are called Purism, and they organized a crowdfunder in order to make a commercial phone. And they blew their target out of the water, so they got an awful lot more dollars than they were hoping for. And the lead developer there is a guy called Zlatan, and he lives in Bosnia, and he's got blue hair, and he's really hardworking, and he knows how to fit everything together, including the business people who Purism have and the technology people who KDE have, and make sure that you can actually get a final working phone.
Yeah, we were following that crowdfunding on over several episodes of Destination Linux, and it was so funny because it started, wow, they're really close to meeting their goal. Then the next week is, well, they've met their goal, and then the next week is, well, they've exceeded their goal by like 25%. It just kept growing and growing, which I think shows there is an interest out there for a true Linux-based mobile device on the market. I don't know if we'll ever see one in US, although one of my 2018 predictions, just because I'm hoping if I put it out there, it'll make it so, is that a U.S. carrier will have carry a Linux device at some point this year. So hopefully it will happen. because I think there's much need for it. And I think for the first time in the mobile market, people were pretty tired. Android and iOS, frankly, have gotten tired. People are kind of like, there's really nothing exciting and new revolutionary coming out there. So I think there really is room for a third player here, and I would love to see it be Plasma for sure, because it looks gorgeous. If you watch some of the videos out there on it, I mean, it's beautifully done. So, and
it fits into the KDE goal of privacy software, because again, on people with their phones are beginning to realize that it's important to them to make sure that nobody can listen into their calls or messages, and you can't do that with a system as complex as Android, and certainly not with iOS. So the only way to do that is to have a system where you know where the software has come from, who's made it, and how it's verifiable. And the only way to do that is with Linux and Plasma.
Yep.
Okay, so you're not just in the Plasma Mobile, but you have what's called a KDE Slimbook. So let's talk about that for a minute. So what is exactly the Slimbook, and where did the idea come from?
Oh, we've got a demo.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
So this was a company in Spain who make Linux laptops, and they kind of saw what we were doing with KDE Neon, where instead of having a separate organization, we wanted to make our software available from the people who make the software. And so they thought, well, why not make the hardware available for the people who make the software? So they worked together with us to make this shiny new laptop, and it's got a shiny KDE logo on it, and it looks very slick, right?
Is that aluminum base there, kind of like Macs generally have, or is that plastic?
I think so. Yeah.
Aluminum, very nice.
So it's a pretty high-end machine, as well built. I believe it cost €1,000 up to lots more. No, less than €1,000, up to over €1,000 if you add in all the extras, if you want everything with it.
Right.
And, with an aluminum chassis like that, I mean, that's far cheaper than a MacBook you'll ever get a MacBook for. That's for sure. Definitely. So I mean, that's a brilliant price. And
it means when you're running your stuff, then you've got the same hardware that I've got and some other KDE developers have. So when you report a bug saying the webcam doesn't work or some hardware integration issue, then we can test that and try it out.
Mm-hmm. I could tell you guys have focused on laptops and that type of thing. There are a lot of distros I install on laptops, and you'll close the lid and it never shuts down, or the function keys don't work, or of course the modem doesn't, the Wi-Fi stuff isn't there. But Neon, all of that worked like it was supposed to. You close the lid, the lights go out, everything shuts down. You guys have actually put a lot of work in there, and I don't see that across the board, which I thought was really nice as well.
It's really great to work with the people who put together the hardware in Spain and have them come directly to us, because all too often there's companies who just seem to stay strangely distant from the people who make the software for their device.
Now, will they ship to the US? Do you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice. Of course, with a US keyboard and US power supply and whatever you want.
Brilliant.
Would you like an exclusive?
Yes, I would love it.
It's very secret. You're not allowed to tell anybody.
Super top secret.
Everyone in chat, you got to be secret.
We're working on the Model 2 KDE Slimbook.
Nice.
So we're upgrading the hardware specifications to make it twice as shiny, twice as light, twice as interesting. You've got, that's USB-C there. If you've got a USB-C stuff, then you've got HDMI. And
is that micro SD? Yeah.
Yep, micro SD. A bit more inputs, more USB.
I got to see that touchpad. The touchpad's where it's. Oh, look at that big touch. Look at that, man! I love the big touchpad. Yes.
So you can click anywhere on it, whereas you couldn't on the previous one.
And that's Tux the Penguin sticker over there.
And an important feature, of course, is you've got a Tux key as well.
You get a Tux key, dude! It's worth it just for that. That's awesome.
So this is still in development. I'm not allowed to show it to you, and I don't know when it will be launched. I guess within the next month or two. And it should be a very, very nice tool to have on your desk.
Absolutely awesome.
That looks so much fun. I could get rid of that MacBook that you make fun of me about, Rocco. It only runs Linux,
Dude,
but I got it because of the aluminum frame.
Look,
and now I have an option.
There you go. Why would you want to run a MacBook when you can run this Linux?
I won't anymore. I'm going to go get that. And I'm going to show it to you and make you jealous.
You do that.
All right. What else do we got? There's another notebook you were telling us about that's like $99. This is called the Bamboo Book.
Is it
the Bamboo?
So this is another exclusive.
Pinebook. I was close.
And you're not allowed to tell anybody about it because it's still work in development, and you have to keep it to yourselves.
All right, everybody.
We won't tell anybody.
This is called a Pinebook, and it's to fit into exactly the diametrically opposite market than the high-end Slimbook. This is $99, £75.
Oh my gosh,
€80. So it's quite a new price point for a laptop. It uses an ARM chip, of course, so it can't run Windows on the whole.
Oh my, that's a shame.
But it's a real laptop. It's got USB slots in there, HDMI slots.
It's an ARM processor, but it's got 1.2 gigahertz, 64-bit quad-core ARM processor. So there's some power in there. It's not, especially running Linux. Is this going to come with KDE Neon?
So you get it at the moment, and it comes with something called Mate. And so what we've been working on in KDE for the last few months is making sure that our stuff works on it as quickly as possible. And so we booted up the pre-installed distro on it, and we saw how much memory it used, and then we booted up KDE Neon on it when we got that working, and so that it used less memory. And so decided that clearly we have to convince them to ship our stuff instead. So hopefully we can convince them to do that.
Well, we would love to. And number one is the 11-inch looks like it's out of stock right now. You can't. Well, none of them are in stock. You can't order them, but you can't even sign up for the 11-inch. But you can sign up for the 14-inch, which was $99 US, and I did sign up for it. But I signed up for it under the impression this will have KDE Neon on it. So you let them know they're going to get a whole order if they get Neon on there, a whole one.
So we'll be making,
at least because it looks awesome.
We'll be making those Neon images available probably at FOSDEM, which is a big European conference at the end of January, and then hopefully they'll see the light and start putting it on by default. It would be lovely. When you buy them, they stock up the number of orders, so they wait until they've got a few thousand people ordered, and then they manufacture them so they can do it at scale and cheaply. And that's why you can't just order one to be shipped today. So it takes a bit of patience or looking around eBay or something to find them.
I've just got to convince the wife why it would be a 9th computer at this point. There's got to be something I need this for that my other computers can't do. I'll think of it at some point.
Well, it's really exciting because, as I say, it's a new price point. So people for whom laptops were out of reach before, like buying a single computer for a whole class of school children, so you can do that at this kind of price, something that's available. And suddenly people are going to realize that they don't need Windows or Mac. It's good enough to use Plasma on their stuff.
And we can finally settle the myth that Plasma is heavy. Can just settle that.
Goodness knows where that nonsense idea came from, because these days Plasma boots up nice and fast and uses only a fraction of the memory that you have, leaving lots of memory for all your applications. Was
there a point that KDE did this myth come from? Generally, myths come from some period of time. Was there a period of time where it was heavy compared to what was out at the moment, or anybody know why it ever came about?
It's always hard to say, pinpoint these things down, because computer memory is a very hard thing to measure, because it's not a simple, it uses this much memory. Right. But it probably would have come from stuff like the KDE used to have a splash screen, for example. So you boot up the desktop, it would have a splash screen that would then keep the user occupied while everything was loading. But loading that splash screen would mean loading all the same stuff that the desktop needed to load. So it was doing all this heavy work just to load the splash screen to keep the user occupied, so that it could then do heavy work to load the desktop.
That's kind of like what Windows does, yeah.
And that's the sort of detail that it needs somebody to come along with fresh eyes and fresh tooling to go, why are we doing this? Let's just drop the splash screen, and then it boots in half the time. So we've long since dropped that splash screen.
Very interesting.
All right, so what upcoming changes can you share with us for KDE Neon? Seeing as how you were talking about secrets, do you got any secrets on KDE Neon?
Yeah, when are some new updates coming?
Well, nothing is particularly secret. We work entirely in the open, and we're a nice, friendly community. And of course, the big news will be Plasma 5.12, which is a long-term support edition of KDE's flagship, original and best Linux desktop. And it won't have that much in the way of kind of shiny, flashy features for the user, because what people have been saying rightly is, well, we want stability and we want speed improvements. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what 5.12 will have will be booting up faster, running in lower memory, being more efficient and more intelligent about when it degrades to support lower software or lower hardware or whatever. And a lot of that comes from the work on the Pinebook, and a lot of it comes from the work on the phone. So it's useful to work on these platforms, because that feeds throughout the whole project. 5.12, we delayed it so that we could get we could depend on some new stuff. So they'll have a beta out on January the 15th, and the release will be at the start of February.
Yeah, it looks like February 6th, I think. So you said
yes, something like that.
Yeah, you said that will be an LTS. So what happens to 5.8 is the current LTS. What happens to that? Do you still support it, or does it just everybody just automatically get upgraded to 5.12? How's it work?
I seem to remember we've got another release or two scheduled for 5.8. The reason why 5.12 is another long-term support was because we like to work with our users, and SUSE came to us and said, well, we've got a new edition of SUSE, something important coming out on this date. Can we have a long-term support edition to go with it? So we rejigged our schedules and to fit in with that. So hopefully SUSE will be able to ship 5.12 LTS in whenever their next release is. And 5.8, I think, is scheduled to be supported until the end of the year. Don't quote me on that, but you can check quite easily. And in Neon, we'll be upgrading Neon Long-Term Support Edition to 5.12, hopefully on the day of release.
Nice.
Well, you guys are doing some fantastic work, clearly. It certainly caught my attention. And so you've seen a lot of changes happen in Linux over the years. I know everybody that I've talked to talks about the dark ages of Linux, where everything was the terminal. Now things have changed tremendously. There is a joke going around that everybody says every year is the year of Linux that I've noticed. So I'm going to ask you, is 2018 finally going to be the year of the Linux desktop?
Yes, I can smell it. It's that close. It's that close. Because now we've got really cheap laptops that come directly with our stuff
for $99, man.
Really well built, good, high quality laptops that come with our stuff. Surely, everyone's going to be wanting one of these by the end of the year.
2018.
Fill all the gaps. So, yep, it starts here.
2018's the year.
You heard it here first. Well, I got to ask you because, and it goes back to one of the questions that I was going to ask you before. KDE's full of settings to customize. What settings do you customize on Jonathan Riddell's desktop when you install it? What do you do? Do you do anything different? You just run vanilla Neon?
I pretty much run vanilla, and it would be fairly hypocritical to some extent if I didn't, because I'm the Plasma release manager. So if I didn't like a setting, then I should have already changed it, right?
So you don't install a dock or anything like Latte Dock or?
No. And Latte Dock, it's a beautiful bit of software. People love that stuff. And so I've guided through that project into KDE to make sure it's being released as a full KDE project, and we can integrate it into Neon, and that's really satisfying to do that when people go, oh, this is the most awesome thing ever. Now I can go back to KDE because it's got silly dock. I mean, awesome dock. But it happens not to be, I don't have a personal use for it.
Surely you changed the wallpaper or something to like a canoe.
No, again.
You leave the wallpaper the same too? Man, you're a purist.
Well, I love Latte Dock. So a lot of times I will use that as the main panels for everything when I'm running KDE. So I thought it was a great thing to have them be brought into the KDE team.
Well, I played with Latte Dock yesterday, but then I remembered, hey, this is kind of like XFCE in that you could just create another panel yourself and make your own dock. So that's what I did. I basically just created an extra panel and made a dock through the panel system that auto hides up above, and it worked brilliantly. So it was kind of nice. Didn't have to have a separate program.
Right. All right. So 2017 just passed. We're into 2018. There's all kinds of new stuff coming out. Any predictions you're willing to make for 2018?
I think it will be can I get political?
It's up to you. We may not join you on your journey, but you can. We'll send the fan mail to you.
It will be a year of social and economic disaster for the UK as it creates borders and limits itself in the world. And then Scotland will have a referendum for independence and will gain independence and will be free to join the rest of the world.
The Scots will be free again.
And we can have our iron brew however we want it. We're not going to be succumbing to the nanny state nonsense. We're going to have our iron brew how we want it, with lots of sugar.
Was that a nanny state bottle? What was that? That's awesome. That is hilarious. I love it. Love it.
Yep.
So one question we didn't ask, Rocco, and it's not on this document. It's really a shame. It just shows how disorganized we are. John, do you play games?
Rarely.
Okay, well, we need you to purchase Rocket League because we're starting a whole Rocket League club.
See, just like you're trying to switch everybody to KDE, we're trying to switch everybody to play Rocket League.
To play Rocket League, yeah.
We are unsuccessful at the moment. You are more successful than us.
Imagine a world where you could game with Rocco and me at the same time and lose nearly every match.
Well, hang on. I've got some people to take that on. Surely my guinea pigs. Surely these girls could take you on.
They probably would show us up.
Yeah, they would win for sure.
Just look out.
I love it. So what are the names of the guinea pigs? What's going from the white one? What's the white, tan, and black one's name?
The white one is Pippi, and she's the matronly elderly one. And the one she's with at the ball is Betty, and she's the explorer one. And the one lying down is Haggis, who's the child of the group.
See, I figured they'd all have K names.
Right.
One of my
Critta, Caden, and
one of my greatest achievements in KDE, I like to think, is trying to reduce the use of K names, because they're crazy things ever. When I organized Academy in Glasgow a decade ago, back then the conference was still spelled with a lowercase a and an uppercase K, and I said for the announcement, I said, well, this year we're renaming it to just be a capital A, and this caused the whole uproar on our secret internal mailing list, causing 2 months worth of flaming debate where people go, no, I love my uppercase K in the middle of a word, and then we had to have a vote, which took another 2 months, and then eventually we renamed our conference to just have an uppercase A and a lowercase k. So my greatest achievement in KDE is removing stupid uppercase Ks in the middle of the word for no reason.
Thank you for your work on that. It will not ever be forgotten.
That's right. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. What is it like to have that many people all at once working on one project? I mean, it seems like it would be awesome in one sense, and then yet a nightmare in another sense to coordinate everything.
And that's part of the fun of it, and it just mirrors the real world, which is full of any number of people working on any number of different projects. And within KDE, we have all sorts of different projects now, including stuff like Wiki to Learn. So we've got a whole academic books wiki, which is completely off at a tangent compared to where we started it off as a desktop project. But because they find value in us as a friendly community, we can support them through cross-project collaborations, like the translations and making sure it's usable, and the infrastructure that's handled. Then they find use in that and value in being part of that community. And of course, it's great when we get to come together every year for Academy and meet up with people from around the world. And that's a really valuable part of the experience, is meeting from people from all around the world.
Right.
Now, if somebody wanted to take on a new language to help with KDE, obviously C would be one, right? C++ would be one of the key languages, but is there an easier language like Ruby, Python that would also be of benefit?
Well, of course, it depends what project you want to work on. And so most of our widgety projects, they're C++, but an awful lot of it is written in Qt Quick as well, which is Qt's new-ish, it's quite a number of years old now, technology to make sort of user interfaces that people are used to now on smartphones, where widgets will slide and zoom and scale and swoosh around the place. And that's a JavaScript language, so it's very, very well understood by an awful lot of people, especially people who are coming from HTML5 and JavaScript. And it's a beautiful language to work with in a lot of ways, and it integrates well with the rest of C++ and the rest of what we do. So yeah, I recommend learning Qt Quick.
Nice.
So we always advocate for people to, if they're using a certain piece of software, to support that software, whether it be monetarily or just support or helping
bug reporting.
In bug reporting. So what do you need? What do you need the most as far as support in KDE?
You can't pin it down to one thing. It is what you say. It's people giving us donations is fabulous. People sponsoring hardware. If typically companies want to support us through that, that's great. Reporting or something like supporting a sprint. So people who have a nice venue, and take Munich, the city of Munich, for example, they invite us out every year to just meet in their offices, and they cook us food and give us beer all weekend, and we get to be together and work on whatever we're working on. And because Munich runs KDE software, of course they get the benefit of being able to discuss issues with us, and we can discuss issues with them. And so, yeah, it's great supporting that they support us by in a way that doesn't cost them any money, because it's just using the offices and the space that they have.
Well, I would regret this if I didn't ask this question or say this the rest of my life. Okay, so
oh man, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know about this. This isn't in the script.
So you have influence on software. We've already established that, at least some. So please bring back the open as root in KDE Dolphin. And the file manager. Please.
It is one of the reasons I went to Thunar.
For the love of God.
Have you seen the news today? Every computer is vulnerable through every program.
I know, but it's just...
You still have to enter the root password.
We live in a dystopian future where you can end up in a fistfight to the death in the forest because somebody's broken into your computer and blackmailed you by taking pictures of you and
Oh, you're talking about a Black Mirror episode. I saw where you're going, man. I've been watching the new season, by the way. It's amazing if you haven't seen it yet.
And you don't want to end up like that. So you want to make sure that the software you're running is at least as secure as it can be. And that's vitally important. And I mean, it's a national crisis that England had when their NHS, the health service, all the computers got shut down and their health records were blackmailed back to them.
Right.
So you don't want to have your national health service shut down and blackmailed back to you. You've got to be secure in every possible way that you can be.
So is the idea then that a hacker would be too dumb to open the terminal and type in the root password there? Because you still have to type in a root password. I mean, it's not like you go open in terminal and it does the password for you. So it's literally just taking out a step of opening the terminal, right? Or is there some more insecurity to it I'm not thinking of?
As soon as you have a graphical program running as root, that will involve a lot of privileged code running in memory, and that will make it infinitely more likely that there'll be some way that code can escape and be taken over by another process. So it is a dangerous thing to run, I'm afraid. Also, if people are being asked for their password on the computer, quite often, then they just become routine. I'm being asked for a password. Here's my root password. And it becomes relatively easy for a spoofing program to put that up on screen, saying, give me your root password, and users just type it in because they want it to go away. And then next thing you know, you're in a fist fight in the forest because you've been blackmailed into a fight to the death. And you don't want to be in a fight to the death.
That episode really stuck with you, didn't it?
Oh, scary program, that.
Oh my gosh. Well, Jonathan, it has been awesome to get to talk to you. Is there anything
Absolutely.
else you want to share with us?
Any other top secrets you got there?
Super top secrets?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Need to drink my iron brew and be
your last one. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you spending so much time with us. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely. We hope you'll come back.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Take care.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Destination Linux podcast.
You sent the invitation to Jonathan?
I did.
Oh, that's okay then. Because if Ryan had said it, he was sitting there last night
He's
for
over.
2 hours waiting.
Over 3 weeks ago. See, our patrons are so used to me screwing up, they're able to work around it.
Right. They know you well.
They're like, oh, whatever he posts is probably wrong, so let's wait for the update. Listen, I'm the better half of this show. And let me tell you, sir, I will tangent all I want.
Really?
That's my tangent. That's my tangent.
You're the better half of this show. All right. Whatever. Can I turn Ryan's recording off?
If you want, you can do it by yourself. I'm sure it'll be brilliant. I'm sure it'll be breathtaking speech from Rocco by himself.
Wow.
The guy who doesn't even run Neon. And you can't get Neon to work right, probably.
No.
It's very technical. It's like i3.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, the rudeness. Oh my gosh, I finally got one right.
You did. So, I mean,
I guess a broken clock's right twice
yeah,
a day.
you know
I was
it.
gonna say twice a week. Zeb, should I repost the Patreon? Did you get the email on Patreon? Because I updated a post from yesterday, but I don't know if it resends out when you.
It doesn't.
Okay.
No, it didn't.
Maybe the better half should probably repost that.
I got the invitation by Big Daddy today, so that was cool. And I got the
He
invitation.
finally sent that out late.
Yeah, we got the invitation to edit the document. That was fine.
I don't send out the invitation until the time is nailed down.
Mm-hmm.
And the time wasn't nailed down till this morning.
No, sure, yeah.
But you sent it out this afternoon. You should stop work.
I should have. I should have left work early just to send out the invitation. Yes, I should have. You're right.
Okay, Thursday, January 4th. Did I get the date right this time? Maybe for once at 3 p.m.
Good thing we're sending it out with 5 minutes of notice.
Listen, I mean, it's already there, technically. It's just now we're sending a reminder.
The one I'm looking at does say 1/3. Was that meant to say 1/4?
It was, but
Oh, that's the one that Clifford picked up on.
the better half.
Wait, it still
Probably
says
did that.
1-3?
I don't know. I'm just looking at the email. I found it again.
Okay, it doesn't fix the email either.
No, that's because it doesn't resend it. It only edits the post.
Oh, what about that?
Imagine that.
It's only like the third time I've got the date wrong. The better half of the show gets the date wrong all the
Zeb,
time.
Then I say to him, like, it was 3 episodes, 4 episodes. Then I say to him, I don't care what you do, just get the info
Get the
right.
date right.
Get the info right. That's all I
Type
care
whatever
about.
you want, but get the info right.
Has he got the info right at once yet?
I think I did do one.
One time, you got it right.
Yeah, one time. Hey, John, can you hear us yet? Nope. We can just mime to him.
Yep.
We could hold up paper with the questions on it.
Do you think we'll get good answers? Can he draw that fast?
Dictionary. Well, none of us are talking now, so of course he can't hear
Well,
us.
of course he can't hear us.
Can you? Oh, you can hear us now?
Yes, now I can hear
All
you.
right, it works. We can hear you. Hey, John. Sorry you had to join us on the circus we have here.
And
That's our producer, Zeb, John. So
Okay.
he keeps things organized, or he tries to keep us clowns organized over here anyways.
Good luck with that.
That's what I said.
They never let me know what it was like when they employed me.
What are we paying him again?
Oh, millions. Rocco, who do you have working on this podcast with
telling
you?
you.
You know,
it's terrible.
it's like
thing.
a bunch of clowns.
Good
or
help
something.
is hard to find. That's all I'm saying. Good help is hard to find.
We should play the circus music when we start.
I think they already know. If they don't know by now, something's wrong.